That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, week 4. I mean, this is going to be a tough week to look at these wide receivers. Now, we're going to go through, we're going to look at what we had with them coming into the season. We're going to look at what we've had through the first 3 weeks and also their matchup for week 4. And we will be talking about exactly who I want where. And to make it a lot easier on everybody to follow, we're going to do it as a tier list. And if a wide receiver's in the same tier, literally, it's up to you. It's up to you with who you're wanting to start over that player. But if they are 2 or 3 tiers apart, I mean, you're definitely going to have a great idea of who I'm viewing as the player that you need to jam into your starting lineup. I mean, we have some intriguing players we're going to have to talk about. I mean, someone like Allen Robinson near the end of the video, we're going to have to discuss with Justin Fields collapsing that offense. But before we do, we have to go through, pick out some winners to give some fantasy flock network hats to. So y'all know every single video we go through, we pick out 2 random winners down there in the comment section. That way we can give some hats away. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, drop a like on the live stream, and leave that comment. In our first comment coming out from Jazzy Fresh, coming out in almost all of our live streams, in all of our premieres. Thank you so much, of course, for everything that you've done to support the channel. And then another one coming out from another longtime member of the flock, Hurricane Warning, says, we're not even going to read these questions. We don't need to be reading this one. I actually already replied to this one in the comment section and gave you an answer. I mean, that's a big thing. Also, if you are subscribed, you come out to the video premieres right away. We answer a ton of questions down there in the comment section. But yeah, all you have to do is go to the description of the video if you won that hat and send me an email with your physical address so I can get that out to you ASAP. And yeah, let's go through and let's talk about these wide receivers. Our first guy, not going to be a surprise to anybody here, will be Davante Adams. Now, with Davante Adams this week, not a great matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but frankly, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, this past week, you did have Jamar Chase coming out, and with only 5 targets, puts up a fantastic day for fantasy football purposes. But with Davante Adams, the reason that we were drafting him where we were, I mean, it looks so dumb now, but the reason we were drafting him over Derrick Henry in particular is because with Davante Adams, you just know this is someone that has a ridiculously high floor, and we have already seen him have a ceiling that makes him the best wide receiver in all of fantasy football. Last year, he was the best wide receiver on a per game basis of 2007 to Randy Moss. I mean, it didn't matter. Davante Adams is looking like just a straight up monster at this point. That is clearly going to be our wide receiver 1 in our rankings overall in his own tier for a very long time. So yeah, Davante Adams 1 doesn't even matter with the matchup. You don't need me to talk about this. But our next wide receiver coming in here at wide receiver 2. Now, I don't know if I'm overreacting here. I don't know if I'm overreacting. We are going to have Cooper Kupp. We are going to have Cooper Kupp at number 2. Now, Cooper Kupp right now averaging like 30 fantasy points a game. He is the top wide receiver in fantasy on a per game basis. I will say there's a 0% chance that that's going to continue. I mean, he is going to regress. It's only been a 3-week sample, even though I know it feels like we've been going through and just having this grind for the past 6 months. It feels like the 3-week season has lasted a lifetime. It's really only been 3 games where Cooper Kupp has come out here and crushed, but against the Arizona Cardinals, this is a game that's going to be ridiculously high scoring. I mean, I would imagine that this is the highest scoring game of the week between the Los Angeles Rams and the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, Cooper Kupp has been a monster, but I really want to know, what do you think about Cooper Kupp this week? Do you think that he should lead off our tier 2 at number 2 overall? It's just so tough to rank him any lower than this. Now, our third wide receiver is going to be Tyreek Hill going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, there are a couple reasons I have Tyreek Hill down here. The main reason, though, is the fact that if you looked at this last game against the Los Angeles Chargers, Tyreek Hill was actually coming off the field for some plays where if you look at the snap rate, it kind of tells us that there's maybe something going on with Tyreek Hill right now, a lingering injury that we don't have that much information about. And of course, you're still having him as a top 3 wide receiver, knowing the offense that he's playing in, knowing the quarterback that he's attached to. And I'm telling you right now, the Kansas City Chiefs are dropping 1,000,000 points this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. But just with the uncertainty of Tyreek Hill and his snaps and how he's coming off the field with some phantom injury, I think it is going to make it where we can't have Tyreek Hill over Cooper Kupp, even though I'm telling you, once we see Tyreek Hill look 100% healthy and we don't have to worry about that, Tyreek Hill will be ranked over Cooper Kupp every single week, regardless of matchup. Now, our last wide receiver in tier 2 has not lived up to the hype so far, but I mean, you're just looking at it saying, great matchup. We had the production coming into the season. Stephon Diggs. Now, with Stephon Diggs going up against the Houston Texans, this is a game where Vegas right now has the Buffalo Bills with the highest implied team total this week. And if you look at the target volume, it has been there consistently for Stephon Diggs this season. Now, I know that the production hasn't been through the roof, mainly because the touchdown rate has been down, but you should expect that touchdown rate to go up for Stephon Diggs. And it looks like this team is exactly what they were at the end of last season, where they're looking to throw the ball over and over and over and over again. And you should have no problems with Stephon Diggs with this matchup. So we are going to have him as our last wide receiver in this tier. Now, going to tier 3. I know this is going to be the ranking that a lot of people just are blown away by. I know that people will be surprised by it. I have to put it out here, however. DJ Moore will be our wide receiver 5 this week. Hear me out. Hear me out, okay? We all know DJ Moore is that alpha wide receiver that, I mean, clearly was a value in fantasy drafts this year. And you're looking at the role that he's had on his offense in just completely taking Robbie Anderson out of here. And then also Terrace Marshall, while yes, he's an exciting player for near the end of the season, Terrace Marshall really isn't providing anything right now. To go along with this, I mean, with DJ Moore, now with no Christian McCaffrey, this becomes a player that I think we can safely project for like 26, 27% of his team's targets. Sam Darnold has looked great in Carolina, and this is a fantastic matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. So with the combination of a fantastic matchup, as well as no Christian McCaffrey, as well as him being dominant over the past few weeks with his volume in Carolina, we're going to have DJ Moore at number 5. Let me know how crazy I am right now. But I think if you're going through, you're looking at these other guys, I mean, try to tell me who I should have over DJ Moore. We're going to have DK Metcalf in here at 6. Now, DK Metcalf does have a little bit of a tougher matchup going up against San Francisco. Now, I will say, obviously, San Francisco just let up 1,000,000 points to Davante Adams, but DK Metcalf isn't nearly as talented as what Davante Adams is. I will say, however, that as of now, I'm recording this on the morning of the 28th. I'm uncertain if Tyler Lockett will play this game. If Tyler Lockett's out and you're really just looking at like DK Metcalf, Dwayne Eskridge, I think there, all of a sudden, you're probably going to be bumping up DK Metcalf to wide receiver 5 over DJ Moore, just knowing that we know the Seattle Seahawks, they're going to be an efficient offense regardless of who's playing at wide receiver with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in Russell Wilson. So we're going to have DK Metcalf here at 6 if Tyler Lockett plays. I actually think we slide him a few spots down. If Tyler Lockett misses, I think we slide him up to 5. Now, our next wide receiver currently dealing with one of his own injuries will be DeAndre Hopkins. Now, with DeAndre Hopkins, this is clearly a buy low player, but the problem is, A, we don't necessarily know exactly how healthy he is coming into this week, and B, he's going to be drawing Jalen Ramsey against the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, those two factors are going to have to make you a little bit lower on DeAndre Hopkins in your ranking this week compared to what we would have a rest of season. Of course, rest of season, give me DeAndre Hopkins over DK Metcalf. Give me DeAndre Hopkins over DJ Moore. But for this week in particular, I think we're going to have to slide him down our rankings just slightly. Doesn't really matter, though. He's still a mid-wide receiver 1. He's still someone you're jamming in because this game's going to be so high scoring. And we know that DeAndre Hopkins is just a stud wide receiver playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, our next wide receiver will be Calvin Ridley. And this is all in the same tier. I know this tier is getting pretty large, but I mean, try to make a strong argument that any of these players should be above the tier or below the tier here. And with Calvin Ridley, the Atlanta Falcons offense has been a train wreck so far this season. Now, it honestly hasn't really mattered with the amount of targets that he is getting on a per game basis. Now, the efficiency hasn't been there given how bad Matt Ryan has been, but keep in mind, this is a new coaching staff. Arthur Smith, this is his 4th week being a head coach in the NFL. I actually think that we need to just assume that this offense is going to continue to progress, assuming that Kyle Pitts continues to get better as he is a rookie tight end that was drafted at 20 years old this season. We need to assume that this offense is maybe going to mold a little bit nicer together when also you have Arthur Smith just getting more comfortable with the weapons that he has. So Calvin Ridley going up against Washington, this would have been a matchup I would have been afraid about a couple weeks ago, but I think Washington's actually proven to be a defense that's not close to how talented we thought they were going to be coming into the season. So yeah, Calvin Ridley, we're going to have him at 8. Now at 9, we will have Justin Jefferson in a pretty tough matchup against the Cleveland Browns here. Now with the Cleveland Browns, obviously they just shut down Justin Fields and that entire Chicago passing attack, especially Allen Robinson. But I mean, to just be honest here, Kirk Cousins at this point looks like he is just a significantly better quarterback than Justin Fields is. I mean, for the long term, probably want Justin Fields, but for week 4 in particular, I think that Kirk Cousins will give this overall Minnesota Vikings offense that's been very good so far this season a high floor where you can just naturally assume that Justin Jefferson, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, even against a tough matchup in the Cleveland Browns, should be just completely good to go. And you had a decent amount of production for Jefferson last week, even when Tyler Conklin went off. Now let's drop it down one tier. Let's go down to our wide receiver 10. And our wide receiver 10, we're going to lead it off here with Keenan Allen playing the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is just a very safe option. We don't need to talk about Keenan Allen. You know that he's the wide receiver 1 for the Los Angeles Chargers. We're saying that being a little hesitant because obviously Mike Williams has looked fantastic. We'll get to Mike Williams in 1 second. If I had to bet on one of these wide receivers to be the wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season, I'm going to go with the guy that we have seen it over a long duration. And also, Keenan Allen just made some ridiculous grabs against the Kansas City Chiefs this past week. You just see how much Justin Herbert trusts them, where he is willing to throw to the ball to Keenan Allen, even if there's a defender all over him. Now, our next wide receiver will be Terry McLaurin with a great matchup going up against the Atlanta Falcons. So y'all know I wasn't a massive fan of Terry McLaurin coming into the season, but going up against the Atlanta Falcons, this is a defense that really, I know they looked okay against the New York Giants this past week, but keep in mind the Giants had just had a significant amount of injuries to the wide receiver room. I mean, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay wasn't 100%. So I think you will have the Washington football team in a bounce back spot against the Atlanta Falcons here. So we will jam them in at 11. Now our 12th wide receiver going right back to Los Angeles. Let's go with Mike Williams going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now with Mike Williams, obviously this is someone that you're only looking at the past 3 weeks. I mean, coming into the year, you didn't think that he was going to be anywhere close to this range. But why I think this is sustainable going forward is we are seeing the new coaching staff come in and just use him in a completely different role. I know we have already talked about this significantly so far this season, so we don't need to be diving in depth. But if you're looking at how he is actually getting utilized in this offense, he is getting targets at every area of the football field. I mean, in 2019, this is someone you would have never seen running a slant. In 2020, this is never would have been someone you're seeing run a crossing route. But now you're actually getting him access to the entire route tree. He's not just running a vertical route every single time, clearing out space underneath for Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler. So Mike Williams, just a bona fide stud. We're going to have him as a wide receiver 1 this week. We will have him at our wide receiver 12. And at our wide receiver 13, we are going to have CeeDee Lamb. Now with CeeDee Lamb, he's going up against the Carolina Panthers. And I'm going to be honest, I am pretty worried about this matchup. I think you're looking at the Carolina Panthers and saying, well, yes, this is a defense I didn't necessarily think was going to be that good coming into the season. I mean, at the end of the day, what they have done through the first 4 weeks has been extremely impressive. And another thing with CeeDee Lamb here is the fact that you actually have him just going through and playing in an offense without Michael Gallup. But on the one hand, I mean, you're getting Blake Jarwin, Dalton Schultz involved. So it's hard to rank CeeDee Lamb this week. We will have him at the wide receiver 13 just because I do think he's an extremely talented player. Now, our last wide receiver in this tier, yes, we're going to be pretty damn high in this receiver compared to consensus this week, will be Julio Jones going up against the New York Jets. It's a fantastic matchup. We are going to assume that A.J. Brown's missing this week with the hamstring injury. I mean, I think that's a safe assumption knowing that the Titans don't need A.J. Brown to play to win this game, combined with the fact that he's currently week to week. So we're going to assume that A.J. Brown is missing. And if that's going to be the case, Julio Jones is just going to be the dominant wide receiver that going back to what he did against Seattle, clearly this is someone that still has the talent. He'll be the alpha wide receiver 1 for the Tennessee Titans in a plus matchup where we know that against the New York Jets, while yes, you're naturally assuming they're going to lean on Derrick Henry and run the ball a ton, they really only need 2 big play action plays to Julio Jones to make his fantasy day. So yeah, we'll have Julio Jones here at wide receiver 14. And now at wide receiver 15, we're going to go down a tier and we're going to go back to someone we love. Let's go over to Chris Godwin at wide receiver 15. Now, going up against the New England Patriots, I don't love this matchup for any of these Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receivers, as well as the fact that you have Antonio Brown coming back into this offense off the COVID list. At least I'm operating under that assumption. And here I think this will just be a game that, while it's a tough matchup, we can see Bruce Arians and Tom Brady. I mean, if they get to the red zone, I'd imagine every single time they're at the 1 yard line, there's no way they're doing anything other than throwing the ball, right? I mean, I would imagine in a revenge game against the New England Patriots, a revenge game. I know they're friendly. I understand that, but still, I would assume that Tom Brady probably wants to hit 5 passing touchdowns this week. And obviously, it's not like Tom Brady could just elevate his play on a dime, but it's more so just the fact that I think you're going to see a ridiculous amount of passing attempts once we get to the red zone here. And I'd imagine even if this team's up by multiple touchdowns in the fourth quarter, they're still throwing the ball to try to pad those Tom Brady stats. And now our next wide receiver here will be in that same situation with Mike Evans. I mean, with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. At this point, I still want Chris Godwin over Mike Evans, but I mean, Mike Evans was very impressive with what he did over the past 2 weeks. He is still going to be an up and down wide receiver, knowing that he's mainly reliant on that touchdown volume. But yeah, they are going to be neck and neck for us with wide receiver 15, wide receiver 16. Now, our wide receiver 17 will be Adam Thielen, talking about touchdown volume. But Adam Thielen, I mean, very similar to Devontae Adams, one of these safer wide receivers. You can just operate under the assumption that he's going to have a very large role in his red zone. We have seen it time and time again with the Irv Smith Jr. injury. It's happening yet again. Has a difficult matchup against the Cleveland Browns. But overall, just Adam Thielen, someone you're jamming in. And now at 18, Amari Cooper. This is a little more difficult. We're ranking Amari Cooper down here just because I think that rib injury he's dealing with is clearly affecting him in a negative way, where if you're looking at the past 2 weeks here, Amari Cooper has been extremely disappointing. It's a matchup we're not necessarily wanting to go up against with the Carolina Panthers. So we are going to have Amari Cooper behind these other options that I know the majority of times, I mean, you would see Amari Cooper ranked over, but the problem is the rib injury. The problem is the matchup. So we'll have him at 18 as the last player in this tier. Now, our next wide receiver, the first guy in our next tier will be Chase Claypool at wide receiver 19. Now with Claypool, he's either going to be rising or he's going to be falling as the week progresses. We really definitely need to be making sure that we're tracking the Juju Smith-Schuster and the Deontay Johnson injuries, because if this is going to be a scenario where neither wide receiver plays, then Chase Claypool, he goes higher than this. Then Chase Claypool probably bumps up like wide receiver 15 ahead of Chris Godwin, just going, well, they're going to have nobody else to throw the ball to. And if they both play, I mean, then all of a sudden you have to drop Chase Claypool probably out of the top 24. I'm probably operating under the assumption that you're going to have either one of Deontay Johnson or Juju Smith-Schuster missing this week. But of course, we're going to have to track this all the way till kickoff. We'll definitely be addressing this in the live streams every single night this week. But yeah, Claypool, not the worst matchup against the Green Bay Packers. I think that you could see this turn into a game where, I mean, Big Ben's just going to have to be forced to throw the ball over and over again, even if they want to lean on the run with Najee Harris. So we'll have Claypool here. Then at 19, we're going to have Jamar Chase against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Jamar Chase is either going to be rising or falling based on what happens with T. Higgins here. But I'm just going to be assuming that T. Higgins is most likely playing this game. And with Jamar Chase, he looked fantastic this past week. The passing volume wasn't there, but it was because the Cincinnati Bengals got to a significant lead over the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers offense really couldn't move the ball down the field at all. So they decided to just lean on the run with Joe Mixon and to slowly drain that game down. But clearly Jamar Chase has that talent. I mean, this is someone that's a great deep threat and has the connection with Joe Burrow. Now, wide receiver 21. I know we're going to get some hate for having him this low. I know that probably in the premiere right now, everybody's spamming, oh my God, where's Brandon Cooks? Where's Brandon Cooks? Did he forget about Brandon Cooks? No, Brandon Cooks will be a low-end wide receiver 2 for us this week. This is a player that I actually had on our do not start wide receiver list this past week. And I know so many people are coming out going, Mason, you idiot. How did you tell us not to start Brandon Cooks against the Carolina Panthers when Davis Mills was his starting quarterback? And I'm sitting here going, if we go back to that Carolina Panthers game with the Houston Texans, and I told you that, I mean, Davis Mills comes out and I say, hey, I'm from the future right now. I'm telling you right now, Davis Mills comes, he has 168 passing yards this game. The Houston Texans scored 9 points. Do you want to be starting Brandon Cooks? Every single person I would ever tell that to would go, no. Thank you for letting me know that I can't start Brandon Cooks here. Even though Brandon Cooks is the only option in this offense, I still think if we continue to go through and try to jam him in with Davis Mills, who we're on record saying is one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL, I think it's going to be a recipe for disaster. I'm looking to avoid these Houston Texans players. You're probably going to have to start Brandon Cooks, which is why we have him ranked as a low-end wide receiver 2. But you cannot operate under the assumption that all of a sudden he's this top 12 wide receiver in fantasy. Now, our next wide receiver is going to be a tier down, someone we're going to have to monitor, T. Higgins. Y'all know how much of a fan I am with T. Higgins, but it looks like not going to be 100% this week no matter what. We really need to be making sure that we're going to continue to track this going into Thursday night. So not much to talk about. T. Higgins, 21. Then our next wide receiver will be Deebo Samuel. With Deebo Samuel, a clear sell high that we had after week 1, based on the fact that you're naturally assuming George Kittle as well as Brandon Ayuk to command more volume in this offense. That's exactly what you've had over the past few weeks, where after week 1, Deebo Samuel seen his production just go down, 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 down. I mean, it's like a linear graph straight down to the bottom of the planet. We still want to have Deebo Samuel as the top 24 wide receiver, though. Just can't have him nearly as high as people did previously. Now, our next wide receiver, Allen Robinson. With Allen Robinson, I honestly feel like this may be too low. He had a 30% team target share this past week, which is an elite range. That's like Devontae Adams level. And that's why I actually like drafting him coming into this year. But the problem is Justin Fields just looks so damn bad. You have to start Allen Robinson this week, knowing that he's going up against the Detroit Lions. And if the Bears can find any way to move the ball down the field here, Allen Robinson is definitely going to benefit with the fact that Justin Fields is looking like he's just locking on to Allen Robinson. It's an easy matchup. It's a tough decision to play Allen Robinson against Detroit, but we're probably going to be in a position where we have to do it. And our last wide receiver we'll talk about here will be Odell Beckham Jr. against the Minnesota Vikings. Odell, you can make the argument that he's higher than this. I mean, it's really dependent on how pass happy you think the Cleveland Browns are going to be here. But clearly the wide receiver 1 in Cleveland, no Jarvis Landry. I mean, he looked really good coming back from injury this past week. Odell Beckham Jr. going to be our last wide receiver on this list. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for going down there, dropping that like, subscribing to the channel. Leave a comment with my worst ranking here or any questions you may have. I mean, get entered to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all. And have a great day.